Welcome to Bleav in Rams, part of the Bleav Network. I'm Erin Coscarelli, back with you. You know the drill. Be sure to subscribe, comment, rate, and follow this podcast. You can also catch us on Bleav TV and follow us on all the socials. Guys, I have a very special guest today. I am so pumped for today's discussion. We are going to talk all things NFC West QB. No one better than Mr. Matt Sims, host of Sims Complete with Phil Simms, who, by the way, he calls Big Phil. I'm going to need to get an understanding of why. Hi, Matt. How are you? What is going on with you? What is new in your world?
Erin, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Too kind of an introduction. I am by no means that unique or special to be highlighted in that way. And you unfortunately got the worst half of the Sims Complete podcast with my co-host, Phil Simms, who is really the star and the leader of our show. But thank you for having me, and always enjoy talking to you about the Rams and Rams Nation.
Yeah, you guys were talking some interesting shop recently. You were breaking down the NFC West QBs. I listened to your podcast. You guys got to check it out. It's a great episode. Sims Complete is the name of the podcast, and you guys don't always agree. In fact, I don't think you actually agreed on this ranking. I see things more your way, believe it or not. But let me ask you this. Do you and your dad, do you guys argue a lot? And if you do, what's the thing you guys are arguing about? Does he get mad about like how you drive your car? Do you drive too fast? Does he want you to wear a seatbelt? Is he schooling you on being a new dad to a second baby? Like, what's going on in the Phil household? BetOnline is your number one source for all your sports betting needs this season, from baseball, golf, soccer, right to all the top fights in UFC, MMA, and boxing. Every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Use promo code Bleav for your 50% off free bet credit on your first deposit up to $250. BetOnline, the game starts here.
Yeah, you know, he really is a great father that way, in the sense that he kind of just lets me F it up on my own, and then says, hey, I was here for, advice if you needed it, but you never asked, so I didn't give it to you. So, but this is what I would take away from the experience that you had. But all in all, though, Big Phil, he is and absolutely he's a great father, a great grandfather. My son loves him. And he plays that card extremely well. And, hopefully one day I could be as good of a grandfather as he is.
Yeah, you guys have something very special. I really do. I love that you debate the way you see things from a younger perspective. And then you have your father who's, obviously been in the game, played the game for a very long time, sees it in a certain way. And right. I love your guys' chemistry on the show. It's fun. It's almost like you're just at a bar drinking a beer and shooting shit. Let's be honest. Yeah. Is that the goal?
Yeah, that is absolutely the goal, because I feel like the show itself started essentially in his kitchen, where he would come home from CBS and, he'd say, hey, what'd you see? What'd you think about this? What'd you think about that? And as we had those conversations, I just thought, man, we might as well just sit down and actually do this the proper way. And thankful to Eric Weinberger and the rest of the Bleav family, Bron and them, for making that introduction and including us into this big umbrella that is the Bleav Network, because we really have enjoyed sharing that time together, sharing our passion and joy with others too, about obviously the position that we both played and the game that we both love as well.
Yeah, and I thank you as a football fan, because it really is nice to sort of get a peek inside the Sims kitchen, if you will, yeah, and peel back the layer of how you guys see things. And one of the things you talked about, let's play the clip, because you guys have an interesting take on how you see things with Stafford. Let's roll the clip.
He's good for 5 throws in a game almost every single week.
Yeah.
That I don't know if any other quarterback in football, any other one, And that includes Patrick Mahomes and Lamar and you name them, all of them. They couldn't make them. I mean, he can drop sidearm facing down the field and throw an 18-yard out route to a receiver and put it with power and accuracy.
Yeah.
I mean, what game was I watching when they were playing last year? Detroit and the Rams. I mean, some of those throws in that game were incredible.
Yeah. And
that's I don't know what else to say about him. Yeah, they got a good receiving core now, but he helps them out too. And
no doubt.
Sean McVay it's like he went to LA and was reborn. It fell apart, let's say, but now I feel like he's reborn again.
I mean, those are things you want to hear if you're a Rams fan. What's your take on what your dad said about Matthew Stafford?
These are things that we openly discuss, I feel like, in numerous situations, with me being a quarterback coach in the tri-state area, sharing that sentiment with, even the young players that I'm coaching. Just, we're seeing the moment now for Matt Stafford, I think, to really enjoy the player that we as quarterbacks and fellow quarterbacks always saw and knew that he was capable of. And now being in an environment with a coach like Sean McVay, being in an environment like the LA area, that, we really get to see it on like a national scale and really truly appreciate, I think, what unique talent this quarterback has. And really, in a lot of ways, everyone was debating after the Super Bowl, right? Is he a Hall of Fame like quarterback? That I'm sure is still going to be debated as the years go on here. But I feel like Matt Stafford is a great position where he can still continue to build on his legacy this late in his career. Whereas I feel like other quarterbacks in the NFL, they're kind of trying to hold on to the legacy that they have and trying to really kind of put that cherry on top. And like my example of this would be like Aaron Rodgers. I feel like Aaron Rodgers and Matt Stafford are both like proven veterans. Aaron's been told that he's the greatest for a long time. Matt Stafford was never really in that circle of conversation for whatever reason. And partly because Detroit really wasn't just super relevant, as compared to Green Bay and that fan base. And I think now we're kind of seeing that, Sean McVay and Matt Stafford put it together for these next handful of years. And if they make another Super Bowl run, we might view, the ending of Matt Stafford's career very differently, here very soon compared to kind of how we thought Aaron Rodgers' career would end and transition out of the NFL. So it's pretty interesting because I feel like Matt Stafford's still kind of like almost rising, as far as just like stock in him as a football player. Whereas maybe with Aaron Rodgers, it got like a little diluted with how much everything was built up a year ago. And now there are some big expectations. I feel like that's why it's a little quiet on the home front with the New York Jets this offseason. But just interesting thoughts about it, as I think about the position.
No, and it's certainly interesting to hear you compare Aaron Rodgers and Matthew Stafford. Obviously, they were both in the division together at one point. And, you see like the stock rise, in my opinion, as a fan, with Stafford in LA paired up with Sean McVay. And I think there are so many question marks when it comes to Aaron Rodgers and how that's all going to pan out in New York. Do you almost see like they're kind of having sort of opposing directions, or how do you, because it's interesting you're comparing the two. I think a lot of people actually do compare the two.
Yeah, and that's why I do bring them up as well, because they did share that same timeline, so to speak, right, in the NFC North division that way together. And it seemed like Aaron always got the better of that debate, but I really think it's just like the surrounding cast and environment was always just that much better than Matt Stafford's was. And I feel like he never really got the credit that he deserved because he really had to do more with less. And, for an extended period of time. And I think that's where, even for us now as fans, I don't know, you can't help but not enjoy what we've seen from Matt Stafford these handful of years, right? The way that his new team has embraced him, his teammates, the way that they speak about him. I mean, like hearing Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua talk about Matt Stafford, it's like, you want to live your life and you hope that one or two individuals your entire life that you meet or encounter speak about you in that same sentiment. So it's extremely powerful. He's a very underrated, undervalued quarterback in the NFL. And I think, unfortunately for us, unless they hit another home run with winning another Super Bowl, he will be one of those guys where we look back and, like, my son, for example, be like, hey, who's Matthew Stafford? And I'm like, listen, dude, he is one of those guys. And for whatever reason, nobody talks about him enough. And, our families felt that way about him for a very long time.
Why do you think that is? Because, in your previous episode, numbers lie. You guys talked about it. Stafford only completed 62%.
Right.
So he must be inaccurate. 24 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. But then I think Big Phil said no other quarterback, including the Mahomes and the Jacksons, can make those types of throws. Why do you think he is still considered an underrated QB?
I think it's one of those, the perception and the reality aspect of it. I just don't think that enough people in media really truly appreciated what he was doing in Detroit for those long periods of time.
Mhm.
And I really think it's one of those things that we kind of pick and choose who we kind of say, oh, it's not their fault. It's everything else. We've seen it with Justin Fields. Like, it's not Justin Fields, it's the organization, it's the coaching staff, it's this, it's that. So fans and media, of course, we gravitate to certain people, and sometimes we kind of make sure that we pin the narrative in a way that makes it seem like we know what we're talking about when we're all just fans. And I think finally we're getting to see people come around to the fact that, yes, like, Matt Stafford still has MVP like caliber traits to him, and he still has that ability to win that award, to take his team to the Super Bowl, to make those dynamic throws late in the game, to be tough, to be a great leader. And that's why he was easily number one on the list for our NFC West discussion that we went. My list that I had, it was Matt Stafford 1, Brock Purdy was 2, Geno Smith was 3, and I put Kyler Murray at 4. And a lot of people were pissed with me about Kyler Murray at 4, and rightfully so. I understand exactly where the fans are coming from. Kyler Murray, talent-wise, is probably 1 or 2 on that list, but I really tried to put into perspective just like what it really means to be the quarterback and, like, the franchise guy. And I feel like for Kyler, he is on the bottom of that list compared to guys like Matt Stafford, Brock Purdy, and Geno Smith at the moment. That doesn't mean it can't change, but at the current moment, that's just the way that I viewed it.
No, and I love it. And thank you for telling us our list, because we here Bleav in Rams also wanted to get your ranking. And you said Stafford 1, Purdy 2, Geno 3, Kyler 4. And when I listened to your episode, one of the things that you mentioned, and I think it is so diabolically important to know why this is important, you mentioned leadership, and the question mark with Kyler Murray is you're not 100% sure if he is a better leader than Geno Smith. So that's why you put him at 4, because you deem Geno to be better. What is it about Kyler that you still want to see, that emblem that shows to you or proves to you that he is a capable leader? Because I don't think that we talk enough about that. We talk about stats, but we don't actually talk about the quality of what makes a good leader.
Yeah, it's not, and I feel terrible too sometimes bringing up these conversations like that, right? Because I mean, we're all people, right? We're all, trying to find our way, on this floating ball in space right now. But Kyler, I think, really just needs to develop more so of that personality that we fall in love with when we see guys like Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes, right? And even now, more recently, kind of understanding it too about Matt Stafford, even like the Brock Purdy's of the world. Everybody in the NFL knows that Brock Purdy's not the most talented football player out there, but you cannot deny that he has that presence when you see him on the field, how calm he is, how composed he is, how, like, he is exactly where his feet are when you see him, right? He is present. You can see how he's engaging with his teammates. He takes fault, right? Like no other. He is willing to land on the sword for his team and say, hey, I got to be better. I got to do better. I let the team down, all those things. And these small micro moments that you see when we watch the game, I feel like over time do build up. And we've seen, unfortunately for Kyler, I think a lot of more negative micro moments like that, right? On the sideline, on the field, things that have taken place in that rumor mill, with his contract, what teammates have said about him, all those things. And these are things that just because it was true yesterday doesn't mean that
Mhm.
it has to be true tomorrow for him. But that to me plays a very big part in, why he did land at number 4 in the division. I know the talent is there, but I just think the other guys really understand who they are as men and leaders to their individual football team a little bit more than he does at the current moment.
And look, I appreciate, Matt, you and I, we've had conversations about philosophy, how we see the world, and how we, choose to treat other people. But what I will say is being able to endure adversity means you have to be willing to take, I don't call it criticism because I don't really think of anything as criticism. If I take something personal, then that's kind of on me.
Right.
I think we all have to be willing to look at and be curious about feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And in my opinion, every great leader has the ability to go, you know what? I don't understand what you're saying, but I'm willing to dig in and get curious to make myself better, to make the collective better. So, I mean, I appreciate that it's hard to dig into some of these guys and point out what you see, but they're playing a big man sport, and to
No
be
doubt.
able to up level and show up at the professionalism that is required to be in the National Football League, you have to be willing to look at yourself. Kyler is no doubt a talented individual, but if things are getting in the way of him being able to perform at his high, and look, he's coming off that injury he had in November of 2022. The future is bright. Is he
Yeah.
willing to take advantage of it? And the division is not an easy division.
No.
It's really up to him.
It totally
But
is. And he has that backing right now. I mean, contractually, he understands that there's support there. I think Jonathan Gannon, the one thing that we discussed in our show together is that, he is that leader of men. You could see that the team has a different vibe and attitude to them already in a very short period of time. This is why I feel like they were competitive, what seemed like in every single game that they played in. They just maybe weren't as talented or as a well-oiled machine both through their ranks yet to really kind of overcome late in a lot of those games. But the fact that they were, scrapping and clawing and really just showing some real grit to their football team, that's a tremendous sign. And that's where I would say, like, if I was that quarterback coach in that room, just being like, Kyler, let's continue to develop that part of you to match what our team is. And then all the other stuff that you do extremely well, we will never coach that out of you. We want you to play free. We want you to be open and athletic and use your legs and be a great thrower on the run, but let's also tap into what coach is really trying to build here too. And that's where I think, like with Sean McVay, we see that with Sean and with Matthew Stafford, right? We saw that with Pete Carroll and Geno Smith there. Like, they kind of resonated like, hey, you're an underdog, I'm an underdog. Like let's do this together, Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy. So you see that dynamic, and you see that throughout the history of the game too as well. You can't name one great quarterback without probably naming a coach that goes along with them. I don't care what you say. Brady and Belichick will always be, what's the chicken or the egg conversation. It doesn't matter. They both existed together. And I think that's where we're at for Kyler. He's kind of out of that crossroads now, where now it's time, like, hey, the game is moving forward, and now it's up to you whether or not you're really going to be the guy for the team going forward. So it's exciting times for him, and I think he's more than capable of fulfilling that prophecy too.
Well, let's move the ball forward ourselves and go to your third ranked quarterback in Geno Smith. He's gone to the Pro Bowl, I want to say, in each of the past 2 seasons. He did take a step back statistically, but promising for sure, especially because no one really saw this coming.
Right.
What would you say Geno's Achilles heel is now, and what is getting in the way of him in terms of improving and moving up in your rankings, let's say?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, his Achilles heel has nothing to do with the person himself. It really is the fact that just they couldn't protect him very well. The offensive line was very skittish the entire year. It doesn't help either that he's got some pretty good defensive coaches and defensive guys, in the NFC that are going up against them week in and week out. But still, it just as a whole, I feel like the offensive line really made it difficult for Geno to be consistent the entire season. He took a lot of big hits. He played extremely tough, and even Geno is a great inspiration, I feel like, for a person like Kyler, right? Because of everything that he's gone through. And that's also why I think, too, for Geno, I trust that he can kind of withstand some of the things that he's going through with the offensive line kind of being rebuilt and obviously the new coaching staff and adapting to that, because the guys had to adapt to 7 or 8 different coaching staffs throughout his career. So that doesn't surprise me at all. His talent, he is as pure of a pocket passer as it gets. He can still extend plays and move extremely well in the pocket. His ability to throw with power and with touch is absolutely remarkable. He's not quite on the same level of Matt Stafford with arm talent, but damn, he throws a really good football down the field. And, another guy, too, that I think because of the path that he took to get to where he is, he has that natural presence in that locker room that I think a lot of people can trust because he's been through it all.
I mean, doesn't that say so much? There's nothing that I enjoy more because it resonates for me so deeply than the comeback story.
Right.
I think, we as media, and you, of course, as a former pro player, the interview always goes to the team that wins.
Right.
And I think there's so much wisdom, insight, depth, to appreciation to be gained when you go through tough times. And Geno Smith is really, truly one of my favorite stories in the NFL because you're absolutely right. I mean, he's showing up every single day, grateful to be on the gridiron, don't you think?
No doubt. No doubt. And there's no doubt that he spent a lot of times, basically in the shadows and just waiting for that next opportunity. And that's where, even when I tell my students this too, is that that's why Geno's a great lesson, right? For my students, even for me and all that. Just, I know him. I was there with him in New York. We had a great time together. We were absolutely battling uphill with our circumstance of us both being rookies and looking to each other for advice, even though we knew each other didn't have the advice we were looking for. We still confided that into our discussions with each other. But, big picture wise, this guy has all of that ability and then some. And I just hope that, the offensive line building a little bit more of a rapport with each other will allow him to take that moment to grow again into the position, because he's more than talented enough to get it done. His skill set is absolutely perfect for the NFL. And his really just, the fact that he was able to show up, be present, work hard, and just not knowing that he was going to get that opportunity again, I think is what, everyone here in America loves that story, right? Is that he finally did get that shot. And when he did, he made the most of it. And I think that's really powerful. And I think that resonates with a lot of teammates that he has, but also too fans of the game too, that really understand how difficult it is to be a quarterback.
And honestly, I root for him, even though obviously I'm with the Rams. I still want to see guys like Geno succeed.
Totally.
Moving on though, because we still have one more quarterback to cover. We've covered number 1. We have yet to cover your second,
right?
That you have deemed to be Brock Purdy with the Niners.
Yes.
Why for you? Does he get second place? What does he do well? And what do you think he still kind of needs to improve on?
Yeah. So, I mean, with Brock, you can see that he's the ultimate point guard. I love the fact that Kyle Shanahan has absolutely just changed and adapted what we typically see from him of being primarily an under center football team, more run-based focus, right? Outside zone, inside zone, all those things with the gadget plays built off of him. Because of Brock and his skill set, I feel like he really opened up the offense tremendously, made it a little bit more spread out, designed it, I think, a little bit more how his Iowa State offense operated. And that allows Brock, I think, a better view of the field for him to really make quick decisions extremely fast. He goes through his progressions really, really well. He sees the field extremely well. compared to some other guys on the list, yes, he does lack the overall physical talent at times to physically impose his will on defenses. So if there is a weakness, it's his lack of size and his lack of ability to kind of stand in there and to make dynamic throws like some of the other people that we said when people are around him. That being said, though, he does a great job with off schedule stuff. He does a great job of managing the football game. And he does a great job, too, I think, of really just, again, that leadership aspect. Everyone seems to believe in him tremendously, will know that he will get the job done. And he does it in a humble way that I think really is intoxicating to everybody in that locker room.
Yeah. No, humble. I love that. His story, again, another great story for sure in the NFL. And it's been unbelievable to watch where he's come from and
No
to
doubt.
see where the team goes. It's going to be an interesting another season with Brock Purdy and the 49ers and how he's going to continue to, like you said, point guard, game manage the season moving forward. I think a lot of fans very curious if they can compete with all the additions and changes and, DC gone, Aaron Donald gone, will they be able to go toe to toe with the 49ers? We shall see. But a big thanks to Matt Sims on the state of the NFC West quarterbacks. I'm not letting you leave, though, until you tell me, why does Phil Simms get called Big Phil on the Sims Complete podcast? Inquiring Mike, YouTube wants to know. People are talking about it now.
I don't know if they're talking about it, but I don't know. I mean, just Big Phil, it's just one of those things where I guess a smart ass son like myself, just hanging out with him, of course he's a big person. He's an NFL quarterback, right? He's 6'3", he's 245 pounds, and I shaved off a few pounds for him. But also too, like his presence, he has a big presence that way too, right? And it's really hard to deny that when you meet him, when you get him in that right, circumstance, he can really get it rolling, tell some great stories, share his wisdom and all that stuff too, even stuff when I didn't really care about it back when I was a teenager, but now truly appreciate it. But, he's just, he's big in the sense of just his personality, his aura, right? His presence in our family. And that's how he got dubbed the name Big Phil. And of course, me and my brother have now taken liberties to that nickname and adding a few extra things to it here and there, depending on the circumstance.
I mean, you guys, you have such a great show. You have such a great dynamic. I love hearing you talk about your dad and just the dynamic that you guys have. You really make it fun. You've got to check out their podcast. It's called Sims Complete. Find it where you listen to podcasts. I cannot tell you how much it's the perfect drive listen. When you're in the car, you get such a great little breakdown of what's sort of happening in the news today, the way your dad sees things, the way you say your dad sees things. It's quite entertaining, very enjoyable. And it's a great, especially because, we're in the off season. What are things to talk? How do we look at the off season and what players are going through now and setting us up as we gear up for the regular season, which is literally just around the corner. So
it's amazing. Yeah.
I appreciate you. Thank you again for jumping on, and we'll have to get you back, but we appreciate the rankings yet again on the Bleav in Rams podcast. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you guys. Go Rams. Let's go.